Hey everyone, and in today's video I want to give you guys a little tip that we can use, a little tool that we can use to add a little bit of extra resistance and intensity to some of the basic kettlebell movements, because you will find that when you start training with kettlebells, some of the movements you will get stronger in relatively quickly. You're talking like your deadlifts, your swings and your presses. These things might become a little bit easier the more you train, obviously, because you'll get stronger. And then some of the more complex movements, the trickier movements, sort of like snatches and your windmills and some of the half kneeling things, the weight that you've got might be fine for them as it is, but some of the other movements will become too light and too easy. So we need to find a way of adding some resistance to these so that we can carry on progressing, make them a little bit harder. And what I want to achieve with this is that I don't want you to all have to run out and buy a heavier kettlebell just to sort these movements out. You don't want to have to buy one, because sometimes they can be expensive. If you've got the expense to do that and you want to go and buy a heavy one, by all means go and do that. But for those that are a little bit on the fence about wanting to invest in another kettlebell, a little bit heavier kettlebell, we want to come up with a way to try and add a little bit of resistance to some of the basic, easier, more compound lifts that we're going to do with kettlebells. And the way that we're going to do this is with a relatively cheap resistance band. Like, you can get a pack of these off Amazon, eBay, or whatever you want. You know, they're not that expensive. They're quite accessible, and you can use them in a lot of variety. You know, you can add a lot of variety to these. So I'm going to give you guys a way to increase the resistance on some of these movements. Now, the first movement that we're going to go over is the kettlebell swing. It's relatively easy to set up. You just get your band and your kettlebell, and all you're going to do is you're going to feed it through the handle of the kettlebell like that, and all you're going to do is wrap it round and pull it back through on itself. So you end up with that. So you can sort of lift the kettlebell with that. What I suggest doing is putting them down by the sides, so it's at the bottom of the handle around the bell. So instead of just having a kettlebell, now whether you can just swing freely, we're going to put our feet through the band and under our feet and stand on it. And what this is going to do is that when you swing out, that the band is going to come into play, add that resistance, and almost want to pull it back. So it's going to make a little bit, you're going to have to control it more on the way back, and you're going to have to use more force to get the kettlebell to swing outwards. So it's going to look a little bit like this. It's obviously just going to be the same as a normal swing, but it's just going to add that little bit of extra resistance, so you don't need to buy a new kettlebell to go up in weight. So we're just going to swing back as normal, and it's going to want to try and pull it back. So you need to use that force and your hip power to get it to go outwards, and it's also going to want to try and pull it back. So you've got to really use your core and your strength to control it back, so that it doesn't just get pulled back. Now the next one that we're going to lack it. Now you can use that same method for adding like an extra resistance to a deadlift, or to a row or something of that nature, but we're going to use a different style of one. All we're going to do for like the deadlift one, because I feel like the band is quite long, that when you do it in that style. So for this one, we're going to use a different method, and all you're going to do is just put it straight through the handle and have it just like that. It's just super easy, and it just shortens the resistance band and adds a lot of tension to it. And to do this, all you're going to do is put the bell in place, put your feet through each end of the band, and then you're just going to put it into position, and all you're going to do is deadlift it like you would normally do. So very simple, up and up again. That's it. And the same can be done for the rows. So all you're going to do is stand, have it there, and you're going to row it up. And all that's doing is adding tension to the top of it. So obviously at the bottom, there's not going to be any tension whatsoever on the band. But as you get higher and higher through the movement in the row and the deadlift, that tension is going to come into play and start wanting to pull it back down. So you're going to have to use the force to bring it up. A really nice, easy way to add a lot more tension and resistance to the top end of each movement. Now you can also use this to add some resistance and some tension to an overhead press. So we're going to use the same method that we use for the kettlebell swings. We're going to go through the handle, up and over, pass it through, and then you're going to end up with that sort of loop. And again, we're going to put the foot in the end of the hoop. You can just use one foot this time because we'll probably do one side at a time. We're going to bring the kettlebell up into a position. And now all that tension is already on the band, so this is going to make the press quite a bit harder. So we're just going to press up. Now you can see how the intensity there, how that had increased. Now if I were to just not do that with the band whatsoever, it's fairly easy to press. But adding that little band with that tension already there, added that extra resistance, making it a lot harder. We've added a lot of intensity there just with minimal effort. Right, so that is just a few of the basic movements, some of the things that you'll probably progress in strength relatively quickly with. And all we've done is added one tiny little band to this. Now you can get a pack fairly cheap, it doesn't cost too much, from ranging from a thin one like this to a quite heavy one. So you can get a lot of progression out of bands and just one kettlebell if you're not looking to invest in a heavier kettlebell just yet. Certain moves, when you're doing windmills and snatches, like I mentioned before, you're probably just going to want to stick with that. I wouldn't try adding a band to them. Any sort of ballistic movement where it's moving all over the place and you're doing a lot of rotations, I wouldn't add a band to those because they're just going to get in the way. And the great thing about the bands is that they can replace a lot of the cable machine movements. So you can have these attached to a kettlebell, and you can have the kettlebell on the floor, and you can do some rows with it. They're very versatile in the fact that they can replace some of the cable machine rows if that's what you're looking for, that kind of thing. But overall, they're a really nice way to add a little bit of extra resistance to your already existing kettlebell without having to invest a lot of money into some new equipment. But yeah, that's going to be it for this one. I hope you found it informative. I hope it's helped some of you. If you was on the fence about buying a heavier kettlebell, I hope this will be a nice way to bridge that gap and add a little bit of intensity to your workouts. So if you did find this helpful, please do leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.